was a time I just hate to remember, because nothing but treason. By treason, I mean people you had liked, had even actors, for instance, you had hired, and whose careers you had furthered, and so on and so forth. From one day to the next, they had become Nazis. You know, it was still to me not explainable phenomenon. I couldn't explain it to you. Why so suddenly? You know, it changed from democracy to Hitlerism.
Did they stop you doing the kinds of plays that you wanted to do?
Well, yes, of course. I had a Jewish wife, and I was a leftist. Everybody knew about it. The plays I had staged in Leipzig, for instance, I had opened my last season with a play on Sacco and Vanzetti and so on and so forth, all of which, of course, was deeply disliked and disapproved by the Nazis. So I didn't have a good standing with the Nazis, with no one really, you know. There was all of a sudden a terrible loneliness about the two of us, my wife and myself, and you hardly could say anything. You always were afraid to be overheard, you know. So I still remember the day we went to a very distant place behind the main station in Leipzig, where the rattle of trains coming in and going out, you know, was a kind of shield against being overheard. I told Mrs. Sirk, we have to leave Germany. And I realized, as a stage director, there was no chance for me in America or anyplace else. So I said I have to become a film director. It's a good title. And I was, as always, I've been attracted by titles. I liked the title. It was a script which was, to my mind, then already a melodrama. It had music in it, as I always have been defining melodrama. Most of my films, I found out to my own surprise, have a lot of music in it, orchestras, and always has some music in it. Now here I had Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in it, which was quite audacious. This last film I did for UFA, in the meantime I had a long contract with them for 6-7 years, what do I know, was La Habanera, with Zara Leander, the very famous Swedish star. And this picture took place really on Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. And so it had to be shot outside of Germany. I picked Tenerife. I got out of Germany. I shot the film. And I
You didn't come back?
Yes.
Did they try to get you back?
Well, they did, yes. They did everything to get me back. I got a letter from Goebbels telling me my wife could stay outside Germany, and I could even send some money to her, you know, but they needed me in Germany as a director, which was true because so many had left, you know. There was a need for movie makers in Germany. And then I wrote a long letter to UFA, and not holding back anything, I told them how gruesome it was for me, and I had not the slightest idea ever to return to Germany. And after this letter, I knew I had to get out of Paris. So I got a job in Holland, of all places, together with the German playwright Zuckmayer, a then very famous and very good playwright. Both of us together, he wrote the script, I directed the film, miserable salary, but we thought we were safe in Holland. Of course we weren't, because, as you know, the Nazis came to Holland too. Fortunately, we were able to leave just before the Nazis came in, on the last boat to America on the Statendam. And so I came to America, to New York first, then to Hollywood.
Could you speak English?
I couldn't. I spoke Latin, I spoke Greek, I spoke French, I spoke Danish, I spoke German, but I didn't speak English. Now, I saw the film just a few months ago, half a year ago or so, in Zurich, again. And to my surprise, they had changed the finish of the film completely.
You never knew that before a year ago?
No, because I had no connections with Colombia anymore. I hadn't seen the film anymore, so I was deeply surprised. And in the silliest way, and the cheapest way, you know, out of a long sequence, they had made a two-shot of maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and that was all, giving it a so-called happy end. It was probably Harry Cohn's idea, I suppose. Then I made a film, independent film, Scandal in Paris, which I have seen again with George Sanders. I consider it a very good film. It's a comedy, and it's technically done extremely well, I think. George Sanders is excellent. Signe Hassel, the Swedish actress, is very good, etc., etc. Now, on account of this film, I got an offer from Universal. Mr. Spitz, then in charge of production at Universal, I suppose, had seen the film, he liked it, and he said, "You're definitely a comedy director, and we need comedy directors more than anything else, because people want to see comedies, and if you are prepared to sign a contract with Universal, just come over, that's ready for you." I came over, they gave me a contract, and it's the first comedy. I got a submarine film, which had nothing to do with comedy. And I was a little bit surprised about that. I talked to Mr. Spitz, who was a very nice old man, and he said, "Well, we found out from your career you have been with the Navy, so you must have some knowledge of submarines." It was an awful film, of course. It was a real B film, and they probably gave it to me because no one else wanted the film.
Did you seem to get a name for doing melodramas after that? Didn't you? Magnificent Obsession was so successful.
Yes. Now, mainly, I think, while it was melodramatic fare, which was being offered to me by Columbia.
It's not your taste, particularly?
No. Though, quite consciously, I had made a melodrama in Germany, Schlussakkord, because I thought the main bulk of American movie fare was melodrama or comedy, more or less melodrama or comedy. The so-called art film was a rarity then. Today it's different, you know, slightly different, still not absolutely different. In Europe, most of American films are still being considered as non-artistic, let's say, as melodramas or cheap musicals, they call it, and so on and so forth. They disregard the vitality of the American film completely, of course, and their own films are lacking in just that, I think. I did it mainly because of her, I think, to have a first-rate star in the film. But beyond that, I smelled, I only can say I smelled something interesting in the film, something which I would call metaphysical. It's not religion, of course, it's of that crazy kind, you know, so many sects are preaching in America, and you know, it's typically American. I do think this film never could have been a success, or the book, outside of America. And I realized it might be a success. And there were some interesting things in it. Now, I have been speaking about this various times, and I hate repeating myself, because I mentioned Euripides, the Alcestis of Euripides, as a parallel to this book, which is, of course, a little bit crazy. I agree with you. But again, in Euripides, we have a similar metaphysical quality, which is, has a little bit to do with that in Magnificent Obsession. I don't want to go into that, because
it's the idea that one person dies so that another person can live.
That's right. That's right. And this interested me. And I thought, if you forget or make an audience forget about the cheapness of the other stuff, maybe this can hold an audience, an American audience. So this is why I did the picture. I did it in color, which helped a little bit. In spite of a poor story, again, you know, or let's say nothing of a story, I got interested in the film.
Can we move on to Captain Lightfoot? You made that entirely on location in Ireland, did you?
Yes, I made it entirely on location. It's not a single studio shot, and even by coming back, I haven't reshot anything. And I picked it because I liked Ireland.
We move back to California with Written on the Wind. That seems to be, on the face of it, again, a melodrama. And
Yeah.
you use the phrase melodrama in its strict sense, music and drama, don't you? I think a lot of other people think of melodrama as heightened drama, don't they? And Written on the Wind is a very, very strong, dramatic, fast-moving film with kind of despair in it. The look of the film is so extraordinary. The colour is used very boldly, I think.
You see, the first time I had a chance, this drama of psychic violence, to use, I would like to call it my stage style, my real own handwriting, which still has to do a little bit with expressionism. While, don't forget, I was growing up mentally growing up during the period of expressionism in Germany. Meaning, as a painter, I would say, in the use of primary colors, you know what it means, of not broken colors, not using the usual then being in fashion, the sentimental colors, as I would like, the soft green, soft pink, etc., etc. I avoided that because I, of course, for dramaturgical reasons, you know, I felt it needed violence in the colors too. It needed, because the picture is full of violence, you know, of because this is a society in transition to immense riches, you know, and their children, it's the story of their children really, you know, are suffering from that, you know. This film had to be directed on two levels, so to speak. They are the main actors, the stars. But the audience shouldn't identify themselves with the stars. They usually do in America, of course. So I had to throw everything to the supporting players, which I did. Because these two poor, rich kids, you know, they are the really wonderful characters, the split characters, the ambiguous characters, the suffering characters. There's the twilight of the soul within them, you know. They are the suffering ones.
I think you
Yes.
had the similar cast in The Tarnished Angels. Was it your choice?
Well, yes, definitely. It was my choice, more than any other film I have made for Universal, at least, you know. Maybe you know, it went back to an old project of mine. You know, I wanted to do it for UFA. I read the book first, The Pylon, in German, you know. And I always have been interested in flying. I've been doing, during the First World War, some flying myself. And I saw the first flyers rounding a pylon. Now, a very primitive thing then, you know. It was during my youth, my father took me to see one of them, you know. And so pylon struck me as something terribly interesting. My idea was to do it, since it is a period film, you know, do it in black and white, which was more according to the period, you know. I wanted to stress this is a film about a time past. And in a way, after Written on the Wind, at any rate, it didn't follow immediately on Written on the Wind as far as shooting the films go, but the two of them belong together. I felt I couldn't employ the same style to it. It wasn't as violent, as glaring, let's say, a film, and it wasn't as critical in a social criticism, in a way of a social criticism, as Written on the Wind is, you know. I was saying more yes to those people. Certainly not more yes, I was saying 100% yes to those people, you know. Like that poor reporter who wants to find out about those gypsies of the air because he's deeply impressed by them. Apparently fed up with his stale job and that poor newspaper office, you know, he's working in, and fed up with society, fed up with humanity. And there
It's a very unusual role for Rock Hudson to play, isn't it?
Yes, it was a daring casting for him, and he really lived up to it.
You used CinemaScope in
Yes.
Tarnished Angels. Did you find that?
It's really of no advantage. It's good for certain frescoes. Let's say if you shoot a fresco, you know, a film with a lot of people, you know, and for a costume film or something like that, it could be very impressive. I think so, at least. But as a whole, I think the old format is pretty good. You see, anything indirect is stronger, in many cases at least, because you leave it or you hand it over to the imagination of your audience, you know. And I've always been trusting my audience to have imagination, otherwise they should stay out of the cinema. You know, you have to leave something open. Mm-hmm. You have to have an open ending, neither good nor bad. Or you have to, they should form their own kind of finish and kind of even thematic of the film, which is good. The moment you do the moment you start, let's put it this way, the moment you start preaching in a film, the moment you want to teach your audience, you are making a bad film. In this respect, I completely disagree with Brecht. I always have, you know. He was always of the opinion, you know, you have to more or less teach your audience, you know.
How did you get Eric Maria Remarque to play the part? Is it something that you suggested or he wanted to do?
Well, I knew his work, you know, most of his novels and the novels which had been made into films, etc. But I didn't know him personally. And when I was looking for someone for this part, you know, suddenly I thought of him. I asked him if he would be prepared to do this part. Well, there was so much of an actor with him, and he glowingly said, "But sure, my God, yes, I would love to do the part." And I think, of course, he's not an actor, but again, personality counts more in films than acting ability. He is genuine in the film.
An Imitation of Life is your last movie made in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And in that picture you use no end of reflections. What was the point, in your eyes, of doing that?
Well, it's a picture which in a way is different from my other films, you know. The thing I was most interested in was the racial angle, really. The black girl, you know. And most people have misinterpreted the film, or at least what I wanted to do in the film. Because I was fascinated in the first place, I didn't like the story so much, by the title, Imitation of Life, because many of my films are about imitated lives, you know, and I'm interested in imitated lives. Can't be violent enough, because there's a boy, he's impersonating Whitey. This is Whitey who shows up there, you know. It has to be a most violent, most cruel scene, because you see the film itself otherwise has no violence, as Tarnished Angels have, for instance, and so on and so forth. It's a rather smoothly running film. And Lana Turner is a very pleasant white woman with a great understanding for the black companion of hers, you know, etc. And almost at the beginning it looked to me like too pleasant a film.
It sounds as though you're about to say that almost all films need some violence in them.
Yes, it needs some counterpoint, you know, definitely needs the film. The counterpoint I usually had in all my films, at least tried to get into all my films. Now, of course, in itself, the part of Susan Kohner is already a counterpoint. The whole relationship between mother and child, you know, the mother who wants her to just to accept her fate, you know. Why not? Good, listen, this is a nice woman we are living with, you know, it's a nice home, you know, you have a nice room there. What more do you want as a black woman?
This was before the time of the Black Power, wasn't it?
Before, yes. And I'm saying in this film, they want much more than that. They want to be equal, at least. They want to be treated as human beings, not as pretty dogs or something like that, you know, you like to have in your rooms and so on and so forth.
The film has a climactic and very long funeral sequence, which is much longer than one would have thought it was likely to be in terms of the weight of the film. Why did you make it so big?
You know, I thought it had to be in for this reason. The only escape for the blacks then was death. This is why I made it so important. This is why I have this church scene, you know, with Mahalia in it, and which was not in the script. It was an afterthought.
It was your idea to have Mahalia Jackson?
Mahalia Jackson.
Now, after Imitation of Life, you came back to Europe.
Yes.
You had enough of Hollywood?
No, that's simplifying the thing. I didn't have enough of Hollywood. I thought I needed a new phase in my life. I've been doing 3 pictures in a year, you know, which means a lot. I became ill, really seriously ill, and, you know, we knew a doctor here in Switzerland. And we spent there very happy years.
I believe in the last 2 or 3 years you've been working in Munich at the film school, the university.
Yes.
Teaching students.
Yes.
How do you and what do you teach them, and how do you go about it?
Well, I teach them my experience in films, especially in American films. And this is what they want to hear, you know.
Do you teach them method of how to make films?
Well, yes. First of all, I do teach them technical things. I don't mean I teach them how to handle a camera, because this they have to learn before, you know. They know a little bit about camera work. But of course, they don't know when to use 35 or 40 lens or whatever it is, and how to angle shots, etc., etc. All those technically and artistically too very important things. Now, this you can teach them only by making a film. This is why I'm making a small film. And in making the film, practically I'm making the film, of course, you know. But if I would be making the film for myself, probably I would make a different film. But I'm making it and instructing them. I'm setting up the camera here. Now this shot follows that shot, and so on and so forth. You have to balance it, or whatever it is there. Every cameraman knows about that, you know, and every director in America knows about that. strangely enough, you know, the other teachers who are very good, I believe, are mostly talking in abstract terms. That's at least what they are complaining about. They are talking a lot about film history. The young people know much more about film history than I do, you know. They know when exactly the year when Murnau shot Taboo or whatever it is, or Doraya shot Gertrude or something like that, which doesn't make any difference, I think, to a filmmaker, you know. It's all right if you want to become a film historian, you know.
But you really enjoy teaching these young people.
But I do enjoy teaching them, you know. It means a lot to me in the first place, and they apparently liked it too, you know. I get some letters from them telling me more or less how much they appreciated, you know, being with me, and they insist on having me, otherwise I wouldn't go there.
Mr. Sirk, thank you very much.
Thank you.